So let me just repeat a bit of that. I'm going to try to get through a few slides quickly to reserve as much time as possible for you to ask questions or make your suggestions about budget, given that we now know what our operating grant allocation and some other envelopes will be for the 14-15 fiscal year. In the final slide too, you will see an address of the blog. We're reviving the budget blog so that you're able to send in discussions and questions and suggestions to the blog. Also, the session this morning is being video recorded so that those who are unable to be here will be able to see the whole thing. So just be aware that we're recording this, and it will go up on that same web page probably late tonight or early tomorrow as soon as it can be turned around. So again, thank you for coming. I'd like to begin then, not helping me with slides. If you followed the announcement in the House yesterday, and then if you read the President's message last night, we have an operating grant increase of $2.1 million, or 2.07%. To put that in context, and I'll come back to it in a minute, we had asked for $3.9 million increase, and we received 2.1. So there's a difference there of $1.8 million in operating funding between what we asked for and what we received. As you're aware, the new, or still relatively new, Faculty of Nursing has a dedicated funding envelope from government. We had asked for $1 million for the final year of the SCBSN, the undergraduate nursing program, and received $600,000. But we got an additional $150,000 to launch the graduate program that was approved, the 5 seats for the nurse practitioners, or the MNNP program, as that's called. So that's the nursing envelope there. In terms of new initiatives funding, we got nothing. In terms of major capital funding for College Avenue and the Residence Project, we got nothing. And the Saskatchewan Innovation and Opportunity Scholarship funding is basically unchanged at the figure you see there, $1.183 million. Nat, could you move on? Thank you. In sustaining capital, which is the funding that we use to do things like repairing roofs, buying new equipment, fixing things around the buildings, we have an increase of $517,000 for a total of $4.576 million. So again, that is money that we would use for equipment and basically repairs to existing building. In the budget, the Ministry of Advanced Education announced a fund of $2 million, and I quote there, for a strategic stream of preventative maintenance and renewal funding. So we need to apply for that together with the other post-secondaries. We can apply for amounts of up to $1 million of that $2 million, but we need to find matching funds for anything that we apply for. So just to give you the figures in contrast, what we'd asked for and what we actually got. We'd asked for a $3.9 million operating budget increase and received 2.1. We'd asked for a total of $1.15 million on nursing and received $750,000. We'd asked for a total of $10.2 million in sustaining capital, and we received, as you saw earlier, 4.576. We'd asked for $13.3 million for the residence and childcare project to spend next year, and we received nothing. And we received nothing for the College Avenue project on a request of $5 million a year for each of 5 years. Now, I think that might be fairly tiny print for people near the back of the room, so let me run through this. This is a very broad overview of what we see as the challenge on the operating and sustaining capital side for the coming fiscal year. First, we're short $1.8 million on the operating request, and we need to think through how we will close that gap. Our needs for sustaining capital are well in excess of the money that we have been given to use for that purpose. Indeed, at an earlier meeting this morning, a colleague mentioned that was unable to play, I think it was volleyball, Devin, because of water on the gym floor because of leaking roofs in one of the gyms. And we have, as we're all aware, calls from all over campus for investment in positions, academic positions in all faculties, renewal of the research infrastructure, particularly in the faculties of science and engineering, but elsewhere as well. Calls for teaching equipment renewal of all kinds across campus. we have, as we've said, urgent needs to repair roofs in the physical plant and elsewhere, and other things on campus. We have very strong calls over the past year to look at ways of providing more financial support for our growing population of graduate students, and I'll come back to them in a moment. We have a pressing need, and we're not doing enough, to provide better services for students, particularly in the area of student mental health and counseling resources. Universities across the country are doing this in response to very strongly expressed needs in the student population for these services, and we need to do more there. There's pressing need for that as well. We need to increase our fundraising capacity. Fundraising is becoming a more and more important part of every Canadian university's operations. We're like everyone else, and we need additional capacity there. And we need also to try to find money for worthy new initiatives. And these are just a couple of examples. The MHA is the Master of Health Administration degree, which is in the Public Policy School. The Masters of Journalism degree was approved by Senate back in February. And if we were to launch that, would require about 1.5 faculty positions and some additional graduate student support. So in order to launch these or the Creative Technologies Initiative in the Faculty of Fine Arts, we need resources. So that's just a very, very brief scan of some of the challenges that face us. I think this is a slide that many of you will be familiar with. We've been talking about money coming into the institution in the form of the provincial operating allocation. This is what it looks like going out. This is how we spend the operating funds of the university. So for every dollar we spend, 75 cents goes out to salaries and benefits of all of the 2,500 odd employees of the university. The everything else category, the 16%, is literally everything that you don't already see there. That would include everything from insurance charges, the costs of licensing software that we use, whether it's Banner or Turnitin or NVivo or SPSS or anything that we have enterprise licenses for. It's a very costly set of licenses. It includes the rental costs that we pay, for example, to house the social work program in the Saskatoon operation. We pay rental to Innovation Place in Saskatoon to house the Saskatoon social work operation. We pay rental to the Research Park here to house part of the Johnson Shayama Graduate School of Public Policy at 2R. And it also includes things, frankly, like copier paper and toilet paper. Everything else at 16%. Utilities are 4%. Library acquisitions are 2%, and scholarships are 3%. That's the outflow in the operating budget at a very high level. Just draw your attention to this slide, and what it tells you, working from the bottom up, is that the proportion of the university's operating budget that comes to us directly from the taxpayer through the operating grant is slowly declining in real terms. So in 9-10, we were at close to 60 cents on the dollar coming into us from the operating grant. This year, or this current fiscal, 2013-14, it's at 55%. And this is a challenge for us as a university, as it is a challenge for every Canadian university, because we're seeing a pattern like this in nearly every Canadian jurisdiction. The proportion going directly from government into the operating budget is slowly declining. Some of the Ontario schools now are in the 40 cents on the dollar range. If you go south of the border, some of the American publics are at 20 cents on the dollar or below. That's a very different system in the United States, but it's a challenge for us that we need to think about and that we need to strategize about in multi-year financial planning. Just a quick sketch on where we are in the context of a rapidly changing campus. I see many people here whom I know, and I see many people here who have been around this university for at least several years, and in some cases 20 or more years. And I think we could all agree that the university has changed dramatically in the past 5 to 10 years in its face. And here's just a snapshot of that. Over the past 5 years, after a period of steady decline between 2004 and 2009, the student population at the University of Regina has grown 14%. We're now at an all-time high of 13,600 students across our operation. And this, as you can see in the tiny print at the bottom, includes our 3 federated colleges, Campion Lutheran, First Nations University, Those are all part of the University of Regina student count and our system. One of our strategic questions, one of the things that we're eagerly looking forward to discussing with campus as the strategic planning consultations unfold in the next month and two, is what is the right size for this campus? Do we continue to grow? Do we say no, we're at about the right size? Do we say no, we should shrink it a little bit? This is a question that will be very much in discussion in coming months. But right now, we're at 13,600. Our graduate student enrollment over that 5-year period has risen by 11.5%. And there, to me, again, is another fundamental question. We will not go as far as the University of Calgary, which has set a strategic goal of increasing its graduate student population to 25%, I believe, of the campus. But do we envisage an intensification of our research and graduate teaching operations on this campus so as to grow the graduate population to, say, 15% for the sake of argument? But we're at 11.5 right now, or I'm sorry, we're up 11.5% to 1,636 students. Perhaps the most dramatic change is in the international student population. Over that same 5-year period, total international enrollments at both undergraduate and graduate levels are up 77%. The campus is a different place. And of that, the graduate international numbers, the number of graduate students coming from outside Canada, has almost doubled in that period. International students are now 30% of our graduate operation through the 9 faculties and the Faculty of Graduate Studies and Research. And I think very, very notably too, the enrollment of self-declared First Nations, Métis, Inuit people on this campus, again, the system as a whole, is up 41% over that period, and now totals 11% of our campus. So it is a changed place in even 5 years. Just a bit more too on some of the implications that as we come into our 40th anniversary of independence, as it were, from the University of Saskatchewan on July the 1st, we're faced with the fact that our original buildings, the classroom building, particularly the lab building, the original lab building, the library, the original physical education building, which is now part of CKHS, and not far behind, actually, the education building, are reaching the age when many of the systems have reached the end of their normal lifespan. And we're beginning to face that together with a number of Canadian universities. Simon Fraser in Burnaby, which was built at roughly the same time as our original buildings, is now facing tremendous deferred maintenance problems as that campus reaches exactly the same stage, where major systems begin to fail and need to be replaced. So, as the volleyball and, Devin, what was it, volleyball? Okay, several teams displaced because of failing roofs. And the problem is, people will say, why don't you just fix the leak? Some of those leaks cannot be fixed without a complete multi-membrane roof replacement. And this is not an area I'm an expert on. There are people here who could answer those questions far better than I, but it's a lot of money. And you see in the next bullet there, we could easily spend over $20 million just fixing roofs on this campus. We have similar problems with the envelopes, the things that keep the weather outside and us inside, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, the life safety systems, the wiring and the plumbing systems in the older parts of campus. Because sustaining capital has been relatively restricted in recent years, we've been able to deal with about a quarter of this. And like many Canadian universities, we're now facing considerable challenges on deferred maintenance, $300 million. To put that in context, the University of Manitoba, which is admittedly a larger campus by a considerable degree and an older campus in many ways, has well over $1 billion in deferred maintenance, and I believe the figure for McGill now is about the same. Just a word or two about tuition. Over the past 9 years, the average annual increase in undergraduate domestic tuition and fees is 2.2%, but we're aware of the sensitivity around tuition. We're aware of the challenges faced by students, many of whom are working many hours a week to make ends meet. And so this has got to be part of the budget-making discussions. But to point out, to put it in context, of the English-speaking universities, and we use this distinction because the tuition regime in Quebec is completely different, and it would be comparing apples to oranges. But in English-speaking Canada, there are roughly 57 universities, and only 14 have a lower total bottom line than the U of R at the undergraduate level. Now what that means is tuition and fees together. We tend to roll nearly all of our fees, not all, but nearly all of our fees into tuition, and so that we try to have one clear, if you like, bottom line figure. Many universities, though, keep their fees separate and publish only the tuition component. So in the total bottom line, we're at 15th off the bottom of 57 Canadian English-speaking universities. And the differential for undergraduate international students, the multiplier, which is 3 times at the undergraduate side, is roughly in line with that at many Canadian universities. On the graduate side, we're aware of only 5 Canadian universities that have lower MA tuition than we do, and only 7 with lower PhD fees than we do. There's a variety of approaches to tuition and subvention across the country, so I just present you with a couple of comparators which may or may not be useful. I would point out, though, when you're looking at the Ontario schools in particular, Brock, Laurier, Ottawa down there, and of course Waterloo and Western, the Ontario provincial government has a very robust program of graduate student support that we don't have in Saskatchewan, and so that government support in Ontario tends to offset, not all, but part of that very much higher tuition. We have spoken with government. We have in past years discussed, and I believe in even several operations forecasts proposed, that we have a more robust program of graduate student support in Saskatchewan. And as graduate education becomes more and more important to this campus, that will be something I anticipate that we will continue to discuss with government. So just a quick overview, and we're almost at the end of the slides. Here is a summary, very bald summary of the needs and the challenges that we face as we deliberate over the coming months, or weeks actually, on the budget. And we seek your input and your suggestions and your advice, and the advice and input of committees like the Council Committee on Budget, Council Committee on Academic Mission, and the campus community as a whole. How do we find support for academic units that are pressed? And by pressed, I mean at both ends of the spectrum. Pressed because they are unable to cope with the number of students that they have, or pressed at the other end because they have experienced over the years an attrition that has left them in a position in which they feel they are at risk of no longer being able to offer their programs. How do we assist those units? How do we provide additional support for students, as we said earlier, in particular areas like mental health? What is our responsibility to our students in that regard? Our need to renew plant and physical equipment. It was pointed out to me, actually it's been pointed out to me several times by the Dean of Science and colleagues in science that we still have some microscopes, and I'm assured they work fairly well, but we still have microscopes in some of our science labs that have the stickers, the inventory stickers saying University of Saskatchewan, Regina campus, which means that those microscopes date from before 1974. I understand they're still working, but it's an illustration of the fact that we need to replace some equipment. We need to continue to seek out efficiencies, to find savings, and to compress processes. That too can be a really good part of the strategic planning discussions that will unfold in coming weeks. How do we do things more efficiently? How do we provide rewards and incentives and supports for contributions to the university's mission? And how do we find resources for development where the rationale is strong? When somebody comes forward with a proposal, a unit comes forward with a proposal for a really fine program, do we find resources for that? How do we find resources for that? Or are we able to find resources for that in the context of all of the other challenges that we face? So that's a quick run through a very high level statement on where we're at and what we'll be talking about in the next few weeks as we put our minds together as a campus community and deal with and confront these budget challenges. A video of the session today, you can see it on the URL there, and if you can't read it from the back, it's www.uregina.ca.yourblog. And we're restarting the budget blog on that page as well, so that you will be able to put in comments, suggestions, critiques, whatever. That should be up and running sometime soon. Shortly is the adverb I was just given. So that we believe the video should be up late today or early tomorrow, depending on availability of staff, and the blog will be open at that point too. But at this point, and also the second URL there is if you want to refer to the operations forecast, you can find it on that page, which is the Office of Resource Planning page. So I'll conclude there with that quick run through the slides, and I'll invite any questions or comments. I want to say I probably will not be able to answer every question. If I can't answer a question, I will do my best to get an answer back to you if you leave your name with us and we can find you afterward. The floor is open.
I'm Sylvain Rowe, I represent IRFA. Can the administration guarantee that no in-scope employee will lose her or his jobs in the coming year?
We are going to try to do everything we can this year to manage the shortfall through attrition. That is, through the management of vacant positions. We will do everything we can, Sylvain, to do that.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Devin.
So, yeah, Devin Peters, student rep on the Council Committee on Budget. So bearing in mind the fact that the university currently operates its mental health services at a ratio of 1 full-time counselor per 6,500 students, rather than the recommended ratio of 1 per 1,000 students, and the fact that faculties are being forced to, more than ever, offer less classes, hire more sessionals, why is the university continuing to prioritize efforts to expand, whether it's through projects like the College Avenue campus or the residence building, rather than focusing on meeting the current needs of the faculty that exists today?
Good question. If we were, and let me try to answer College Avenue first and then the residence second. If we were to abandon the College Avenue campus, we would have to find working space for the several hundred employees who are currently based there and the programs that they administer. That includes, of course, almost all of the Center for Continuing Education operation and a number of other things. If we were to do that, we do not have places to put those people or those programs on the main campus since space here is almost full. We have explored possibilities of, purely hypothetically, closing that campus and building a building here. Every suggestion is that that would be far more expensive than rehabilitating College Avenue, and that's not even taking into account the heritage arguments, the cityscape arguments, and so on. So we have people there and we have programs there that we need to have space for. On the residence front, the residence towers that you see rising there will, if everything goes according to schedule, we've had a cold winter, and it's a little bit behind, but not very far behind. By the fall of 2015, those will be occupied almost fully, we hope, with projections, 605 students and 90 daycare spaces. Devin, the reason that we're doing that is that studies show, first of all, that being able to have resident space on campus for first-year students in particular increases retention by a considerable amount. That is, we risk losing fewer students by having that resident space on campus. We need the daycare space badly. We need more daycare space. And as you know, in the Regina domestic market, there's a crying need for space. So those are the arguments for the towers. The question that really underlies your question, as I see it, is what's the right size for this campus? And that's going to be very much a part of the strategic discussions in the next couple of months.
Yeah, and so that's more my question. When we currently don't have enough sustaining capital or capital to fund the existence of the university as we know it, why are we continuing to push towards a 15,000 student portfolio when we don't have the money to do it right now? And it doesn't seem like the provincial government is interested in offering that kind of funding.
Good question again. It's not, and I want to be absolutely clear, we're not pushing for 15,000. I put the question out as a hypothesis. What is the correct size for the campus? We're at 13.6 right now. Is that it? Is that too large? And if so, what do? Do we raise entrance requirements? Do we make some other shift in our mechanisms for admitting students to right-size the campus? But we welcome people's input on that. What I would add is that the graph that or the table that showed the gradually declining proportion of the operating budget that comes from the taxpayer, from government, implies that in order to sustain the operation, we will need more, not less, not fewer students. John.
Hi, I'm John Klein from Information Services. The The budget sort of worries me, as I think it does a lot of people, and just the amount that the province is sending our way. And about a year ago, I wrote my MLA and asked if the government would help the university find deficiencies by, for example, investing in renewable energy. And it's now 2014, and we don't have a single solar panel in use or in research on campus, aside from ones in our calculators. And that worries me greatly. And I think the building overhauls that will have to take place is an opportunity, because roofs are going to need to be replaced. And as you know, solar panels typically go on roofs. So perhaps whenever the province decides that we need to stop our buildings from falling apart, that they kick in a little bit extra money that will also help our research.
Thank you for that suggestion. God knows we get enough sunshine, at least during the summer, to do something with that. So thank you, John. Marcel.
Hello, just a couple of, I hope, quick related questions. I understood from the presentation that the ask was made for $25 million over 5 years for the College Avenue.
Yes.
I was curious as to two things. One, how many times has that request or a similar request been made in budget asks? And second, how many times have those requests been met with a responsive funding?
I believe, and I stand to be corrected, somebody in the room can probably correct me, I believe we requested it now for 3 years in a row, at least 2, possibly 3, and maybe 4. I'm not sure, Marcel, but I can check that, and we could put that up on the blog. If you just flip a quick question on the blog, it will get answered. What does that say? That there are other priorities in the government's view, and that is the government's right. We just need to keep making the case and trying to raise funds, because we have programs in that unit, we have people working in that unit for which and for whom we don't have space here. We got to do something. And I would argue, on a personal note, I would very much hate to see that campus fall into complete disrepair. It's a beautiful part of the city's heritage and the cityscape, and I think collectively as a community, eventually we'll find a way. I don't mean a university community, I mean a community as a whole, including government, will find a way to do that.
Just a quick add-on. The city, by the end of the year, is expected to enforce recycling on multi-unit buildings. I expect the residences would be included in that. And so is there planning then underway to start implementing recycling for residences and hopefully find efficiencies in getting everybody else on campus recycling at a level that the rest of the city's at right now?
I will do my best, John, to find out the answer. I believe there is fairly extensive recycling preparations in the new towers. The rest of your question, I'll try to give an answer to, or find an answer for.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments? We would, via the blog, but also here, welcome your suggestions. The situation that we face is, and again, I'll speak personally, I'm not entirely happy about the grant, but at the same time, I have a certain sense of relief when I look at what's happening at places across the country. And this is a challenge that is surmountable. What we really need to do over the next couple of months in putting the budget together and the strategic plan consultations is to think as a campus community about all of these things. What do we want to look like? What are the proper balances? How big should we be? Where do we need to devote resources? Where can we make improvements and efficiencies? And how do we, because everybody in the room, I think, shares this goal, how do we ensure that this university truly thrives over the next 10 years and beyond, for the next 40 years? Frederick.
Thank you for the presentation. Just to understand, like, there's major decisions to be taken. You said we'll be involved in a process. How soon or what type of process you're seeing? When we're going to need to take some decisions, like concretely in the next?
The budget will need to be approved. The final budget will need to be approved by the Board of Governors at its May meeting. Annette, what's the exact date of those May meetings? 8th, 9th, 7th? So May 7th is the board date for approving the budget. So we will now shift into ultra high gear to do the work and to listen to campus input on these issues. The strategic planning exercise, Frederick, the consultations really start in earnest very soon, I think next week. And Joe and his team have already begun meeting with groups on campus. And that will be intensive over April and May, and I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong, into the summer. And we hope to have a draft plan soon after that to begin discussions on campus. Annette? May 8th is the board meeting. Thank you. Other questions or suggestions?
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Bailey Titanic, and I'm with the History Students
Yes,
Association.
yes, I
We've
remember
met,
meeting you. Yes.
in the past. So coming from a smaller faculty, we have a fear that smaller faculties will become service faculties for larger ones. And my question is, can you promise that we will not become that? We have a solid foundation of a good faculty that does also have a graduate program, and we fear that 300 and 400 level classes will be cut to enlarge first and second year courses to support other faculties like education and journalism. Is that the plan in the future? We don't have faculty members being replaced, and it does seem like our classes are being shrunken. So can you promise that we will not become a service field? And if that is the plan, can you be truthful about that to the students?
There is no plan whatsoever to make the Faculty of Arts, which as you refer to specifically, a service faculty. The Faculty of Arts remains the largest of the university's 10 faculties. It is a key part of this university's operations, as is science, as is fine arts, and as are the professional faculties. What we're struggling with right now is the difficulty of trying to balance a budget when we've got so many competing demands. Your question is really this: can we envisage a university without a Faculty of Arts? I can't. Can we envisage a university without as many thriving arts programs as we can possibly afford? I can't. But can we afford everything we want to do? At this point, with these challenges, we can't. And we need to have a discussion about how we square that circle. And it's not an easy one. I would add, too, that since the journalism school is just behind us, it's part of the Faculty of Arts, right? It's a professional program within the Faculty of Arts, and the journalism students take many, of course, arts classes. One of the things, too, if I may, is to recognize that everything is interlocked in some profound way. Business students in the Hill School, the undergraduate students, can take up to half of their degree, half of their credit hours, so up to 60 credit hours or 20 courses in the humanities and social sciences. So the business enrollments are helping feed enrollments in the Faculty of Arts classes. The students in education take a number of courses in arts and science and other faculties. How we get that balance right, because it's a matter of great debate on campus right now, the so-called core and then the professional schools, is one that we'll be discussing again intensively in coming weeks and months in the strategic planning process. But I know, having met with you and your group and heard you articulate a very articulate case, I know the worries that you have. I do.
Sorry to
John,
be up so often.
Well,
but-
John, can we just see if there's somebody else?
Yeah,
You've been
sure.
up now a couple of times. Is there someone else who'd like to speak? Okay, John, it's yours.
All right, yeah, I didn't want to cut in if anybody else had something to add to. I'd heard that one of the reasons why we have so little research into some renewable fields right now is an agreement with Sask Power to not produce power on campus.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
What we are
just thanks
trying
for
to do
clearing that up.
is to conserve power. Obviously, we want to reduce our utility expenses, and our colleagues in facilities management have worked extremely hard so that as the campus grew fairly considerably over that past decade, our energy consumption did not grow proportionately. It actually grew quite modestly, and we want to continue to try to find ways to save money on utilities and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we are looking for ways to conserve power, to conserve natural gas, to conserve all of the utilities that we have to pay for. Mm-hmm. Is there an agreement that we have to do this in order to do something else? No.
Okay.
Unequivocally, no.
With we get several million from Sask Power for a clean energy research chair. Maybe there's a possibility of partnering with other electrical generating sort of companies in the province to fund research on campus.
Are there possibilities?
Yeah,
We're-
has that been explored, like with renewable energy technology companies that might be wanting to research here, for example? I've heard that Saskatoon's doing solar panels, and somebody said, well, maybe we can't do it because Saskatoon is, which I said, well, we have bathrooms and so does Saskatoon. It's not like we won't have necessary infrastructure just because Saskatoon's doing it. But what have you heard, or what is the university working towards as far as improving research into renewables, even given our tighter budget?
I think there are any number of colleagues in the Faculty of Science, particularly the Faculty of Engineering and other faculties who are doing research work in that areas. Can I give you specific instances off the top of my head? I cannot. Is the university open to exploring partnerships with organizations that are keen about renewable energy resources and so on? Yes, absolutely. And can we explore those? We can explore them, yes. Trish.
Hi, I just wanted to say a couple of things before we start cannibalizing each other under pressure. That the School of Journalism is fully integrated into the Faculty of Arts. Our students sit beside everyone else's students in arts classes. We bring a lot of students into the Faculty of Arts to take classes, especially through our pre-journalism program. And our proposed program also is fully integrated into the Faculty of Arts, and students will be taking arts courses. The actual journalism courses are only one part of their education here. So
Thank you for that.
I hope we all stick together.
Absolutely. I think that's an excellent point, and not just journalism. Campus relationships are so tightly interwoven, and we really need to come together at a time of challenge and figure out a way through it together. So thanks for that. Sylvain.
What will be the role of the newly elected budget committee from University Councils in adjusting the budget for 2014-2015?
Both those committees, well, the Council Committee on Budget, if you look at the terms of reference, is there to provide advice through Council to the President on the budget-making process, and that's what will happen. I believe a paper for discussion is coming through to Executive of Council from CCB next week. I believe that was achieved late yesterday afternoon. And Annette, if you cared to comment on that, Annette is our expert on procedure and policy and governance. CCAM more indirectly, CCAM's terms of reference focus on the more abstract questions of programming, of the shape of campus, of the academic mission in the broadest sense, whereas CCB's role is more focused on budget, though the two obviously have tight relationships and meet together on occasion. So their role, according to the terms of reference, is to provide advice through Council, since they're committees of Council, to the President. And it is the President then who takes a budget to the Board of Governors, and it's the Board of Governors that approves that final budget. I hope that's clear. Annette, is there anything you wanted to add? Anything else? Dr. Opseth.
Good morning. Art Opseth, Professor Emeritus Engineering. And we have a strategic planning things going on now, and I would really like to see everybody get involved in strategic planning within your faculties and within the university. Unless we all get out and express our opinions, then why complain about what happens in the long run? And my view is we need the programs we have, and again, how are we going to find the efficiencies and improve things to the level that they should be?
Thanks, Art. Art, at the risk of embarrassing you just slightly, if I may, for those who don't know Art taught for 38
years straight.
38 years in the Faculty of Engineering, widely known among generations of engineering students to have been totally dedicated to the student experience and student success. And Art just recently was honored with an honorary doctorate degree from the University of Regina. So thanks again and congratulations. When I see Mary, his spouse, I like to ask her if she's yet started calling you Dr. Opseth, but it's not necessary. Anything else, folks? So again, the blog will be open. A video will be up late today or early tomorrow. We need your input. and it will be considered, and it will be shared. So if there's nothing more, I thank you for coming, and I wish you a very happy first day of spring.